Many people in 2025 feel drained by midday, and it's not because they chose the wrong coffee blend or bought the wrong planner. The real issue is that their bodies are being asked to do something unnatural, stay still for most of the day. Harvard research shows only about half of U.S. adults get enough physical activity, and global data from the WHO puts that number at roughly 1 in 3. In this video, I'll unpack 7 common exercise myths that quietly sabotage your productivity and show you how to replace them with movement patterns that can sharpen focus and keep your energy steady without adding extra gym hours. And to start, we need to look at how our daily movement has changed so dramatically from the humans we once were. Why our ancestors would laugh at your office chair. Picture this. If you set your office chair next to a tree stump and had to choose which one to sit on all day, the real surprise isn't which is more comfortable. It's that for almost all of human history, the very act of sitting still for hours on end barely existed. Harvard Evolutionary research points out that the hunter-gatherer lifestyle involved built-in, unavoidable movement woven into every task of survival. Walking 5 to 10 miles in a day was routine for some groups, not because they were trying to be fit, but because eating, finding water, and staying safe required it. Gathering food meant bending, squatting, twisting dozens of times an hour. Carrying wood or supplies acted as resistance training without anyone thinking of it as exercise. There was no scheduling movement. It happened because not moving simply wasn't an option. Those constant, low to moderate motions shaped the very anatomy we still walk around in today. Our hips and legs were made for steady use through varied terrain. Our backs developed strength not from cushions and lumbar supports, but from bearing weight, shifting positions, and staying active in short bursts from morning until night. The cardiovascular system and metabolism adapted to a life of frequent small changes in activity, not punctuated by one workout and then hours of stillness. As evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman explains, exercise, as we think of it now, a separate block of intense effort, is actually a modern invention. What matters most to our biology isn't chasing that one big effort, but breaking up sedentary stretches with movement wherever possible. That's the problem with the modern desk job. It feels normal, but biologically, it's an oddity. 8 hours in the same posture, eyes locked on a screen, hands in a narrow range of motion, is the opposite of the environment our nervous system expects. Today's average workday offers movement only in tiny doses, walking to the restroom, heading to a meeting, grabbing coffee, leaving the bulk of the day in long, uninterrupted stillness. Data and experts now consistently link these inactive patterns to slower cognitive performance and dulled decision-making. It doesn't always hit you like a crash. More often, it's the creeping mental fog in the late morning, the slight lag in connecting ideas, the easy distraction from the task at hand. The World Health Organization warns that physical inactivity increases the risk of chronic diseases that also impair brain function, and Lieberman's own findings show that intermittent movement matters even more for alertness than total sitting time. Look at it from another angle. In the past, the brain stayed sharp by tying shifts in physical position to shifts in attention. A change in what your body was doing was a natural signal to scan your surroundings for something new, whether it was prey, a predator, or a path. In the absence of these cues, mental engagement naturally drifts. Chairs make life more comfortable, but they also dampen the muscle and joint signals that tell your brain it's time to check in. Elevators, vehicles, meal delivery, each eliminates small but critical opportunities to interrupt stillness. Think about it. When was the last time you stood up for more than 5 minutes on purpose today? Drop your answer in the comments. You might be surprised by how few times it's happened. Some try to balance this out with exercise before or after work, and while that has undeniable benefits, it can't undo the effects of sitting for most of the day in long blocks. Posture muscles need periodic activation, not a single surge. Systems that rely on oxygen flow to the brain, like those responsible for focus and problem solving, benefit most from regular, short spurts of movement. Our ancestors provided those cues naturally through unpredictable shifts in activity. Modern workers have to create them deliberately. Without those interruptions, the feedback loop between body and brain weakens. Movement naturally pumps more oxygen to the brain and triggers a mild stress response that heightens alertness. In healthy doses, that stress response is what helps you notice details, make quicker decisions, and keep mental energy steady. Prolonged stillness shuts that cue system down. And while people often point to bad sleep, heavy lunches, or dehydration as the cause of mid-afternoon fog, lack of movement is often the more consistent culprit. Imagine running an engine all day without ever changing gears. You'll get slower whether or not the fuel is good. You can see the difference in communities that still live with patterns closer to our evolutionary design. Their energy doesn't depend on caffeine cycles or carefully timed productivity blocks. It flows from variety in movement built naturally into the day. That doesn't make their lives better or simpler, but it does show what our bodies and brains expect. The mismatch in modern environments isn't just about comfort, it's about function. Time-saving conveniences strip out tiny repeated efforts our systems evolved to rely on, and that comes at a cost. So the big picture here is straightforward. We weren't built for long stretches of loud stillness, no matter how advanced the chair or ergonomic setup. Harvard evolutionary research confirms that the human body and brain operate best with steady, varied movement spread throughout the day. We were built for variety, not 8-hour stillness. So the fix has to be variety, not adding yet another item to your already overloaded to-do list. Now that you understand the biological mismatch at the root of daily fatigue, we can tackle the next layer. The exercise advice that sounds smart, but actually keeps you stuck. Let's start by addressing one of the most common solutions people turn to when their energy crashes at work, and why it might be doing less for your productivity than you think. Myth number 1, more gym time automatically means more productivity. Myth number 1, more gym time automatically means more productivity. It's easy to assume that if you feel sluggish at work, the answer is to make your workouts longer or more intense. The thinking goes, push yourself hard after hours and you'll make up for sitting all day. On the surface, it feels logical. Exercise improves health, so more should mean better results everywhere, including your job. The reality is, that model treats movement as a single, isolated event, rather than something your body and brain rely on throughout the day. It's an attempt to offset 8 or more hours of stillness with one burst of activity. The problem is that long, intense sessions at the end of a sedentary day don't always deliver the mental boost you expect. After hours of minimal movement, your body is in a low activation state. Suddenly demanding peak output for 60 minutes can be a shock to the system, engaging more than just physical effort but also significant cognitive resources. You're tracking sets, timing rest, and pushing through fatigue. Research shows that such taxing sessions can temporarily draw on the same neural systems you need for focus and decision-making. By the time you recover enough to feel benefits, the workday is over. This is where the timing and distribution of movement start to matter. Studies comparing people who bundle all their exercise into one session with those who spread shorter bouts throughout the day consistently find a difference in cognitive performance. Microworkouts and frequent movement breaks, not hours long, just minutes, have measurable benefits for attention, processing speed, and mental energy that last into the late afternoon. The science is growing. Reviews and meta-analyses from sources like Signos, UPMC, and the Society of Behavioral Medicine show that short bouts can improve cognition and even lower long-term health risks. The physiology is straightforward. Every time you get up and move, even briefly, blood flow and oxygen delivery to the brain increase. That supports neurotransmitter systems tied to memory, focus, and quick thinking. If you give your brain these boosts at intervals, you keep its alertness from sliding. One big workout at the end of the day still improves fitness, but it delivers just one of those boosts, after which levels taper off. There's also the recovery factor. Challenging gym sessions call for repair time, which can run in parallel with hours you need to think clearly. In contrast, short bouts during the day create neural stimulation without significant recovery demands. They leave more energy available for the very mental work you want to improve. Consider someone who works in an office and builds in 3 short, moderate activity windows. A brisk walk around the block mid-morning, 5 minutes of bodyweight movements at lunch, and some stretching or mobility exercises in the mid-afternoon. None of these require special gear or a commute to the gym. Each one prompts that circulation spike and resets alertness before fatigue settles in. This is the opposite of saving it all for later, and it protects cognitive sharpness during the hours it's actually needed. These effects are not trivial. While percentages vary across studies, the pattern is the same. Splitting movement into several points during the day supports sustained performance on mental tasks compared with doing it all at once. Think sharper reaction times, steadier focus, and fewer mid-afternoon lapses. And it doesn't require complicated routines. 2 flights of stairs walked at a steady pace, standing for a phone call, 10 bodyweight squats between emails. The purpose is to consistently break long stretches of stillness and trigger a physical reset before fatigue becomes noticeable. That's not to say traditional gym workouts have no place. They build strength, endurance, and resilience. But for people whose goal is also to perform at their best mentally, the structure needs to serve both physical and cognitive demands. That means weaving movement throughout the day instead of treating it as one box to check off. A useful way to think about it is like eating. You wouldn't skip food all day and then try to get it all in one giant meal because your body needs an ongoing supply of nutrients. Movement works similarly for the brain. Regular small inputs keep it functioning at a high level instead of letting energy dwindle and spiking it all at once. Some resist this idea because they believe short bouts aren't enough to count. That belief comes from measuring value in sweat and exhaustion. But here, the point isn't to tire you out. It's to stimulate your body and brain just enough to keep energy and focus high. Over time, those micro-movements influence not only how you feel, but how you perform, and the change becomes visible in your work output and consistency. If you want to experience it firsthand, try this now. Stand up and do 10 slow air squats, or walk briskly up and down a set of stairs for 1 minute. Pay attention to how alert you feel 5 minutes later. It's not about fitness gains. It's about observing the immediate lift in mental clarity. The takeaway is clear. Extending your gym time isn't the fastest path to a better productivity. Distributing movement across your day delivers sharper thinking when you actually need it, keeps fatigue from gaining ground, and preserves the benefits for the hours where they matter most. That shift in mindset means you stop viewing exercise purely as a single event and start treating movement as an ongoing input to your performance. Understanding this opens the door to seeing other workday habits more critically. The real productivity drain isn't just whether you work out, it's how much of your day gets spent in long, unbroken stillness. And that brings us to another popular claim about modern health that needs a closer look. Myth number 2, sitting is the new smoking, and why it's not that simple. Myth number 2, sitting is the new smoking, and why it's not that simple. The phrase gets thrown around so often it feels like accepted truth, a neat, dramatic shortcut that lumps desk work in with chain smoking as if both are equally toxic in the same way. But the reality isn't that clean. Sitting itself isn't a poison. Every species on Earth rests. Birds perch, lions sprawl in the grass, chimps lounge in the shade. The human body is built to mix activity with rest, not to avoid rest entirely. What makes our version different and risky is how long we stay in one position without a break. In traditional settings, sitting was just one posture in a cycle of many. A chimp might squat to crack nuts, then swing up into the canopy. Early humans could sit near a fire, then stand to tend cooking, then crouch to work stone or wood. Those rests were short, never locking joints and muscles in the same angles for unbroken hours. Today, many people sit for 4, 6, or 8 hours at a stretch, through meetings, commutes, and screen time, with barely any shift in position. That's the piece the slogan oversimplifies. It's not sitting itself, but prolonged, uninterrupted sitting that drives the problem. The risk comes from what happens inside your body during those long, still blocks. Muscle activity, especially in the big postural muscles of the legs, drops sharply. Circulation slows and the ends that help clear fat from the bloodstream, like muscle lipoprotein lipase, all but idle. Blood sugar regulation changes. Research on breaking up sedentary time shows that even a brief walk or light movement can lower post-meal glucose levels. Without those interruptions, energy use drops and metabolism shifts toward conservation. Meanwhile, your spine stays fixed in the same curve, hips in the same angle, and the same small set of muscles either carries the load or rests completely. Over time, endurance fades and stiffness increases. Your brain feels it too. Light, regular movement sends small bursts of oxygen-rich blood to the brain, supporting focus, reaction time, and mental flexibility. When posture never changes, those boosts don't happen, and alertness slowly ebbs, processing speed dips, focus wavers, and you can find yourself rereading sentences or losing your train of thought. You might think you're working fine, but measurable performance can slide long before you feel overt fatigue. Here's where the nuance matters. Someone who spends many total hours sitting, but interrupts it every 30 to 60 minutes with a short change in position, is in a different risk category than someone who stays locked in place for giant chunks of the day. Smoking carries harm from the act itself, every time. Sitting carries harm from duration without change. When you understand that, the solution becomes much more manageable. You don't have to reject the chair, just interrupt your time in it. And research tells us those interruptions don't have to be big. In studies published in Sedentary Behavior Reviews and supported by field interviews with Daniel Lieberman, breaks as short as 60 to 90 seconds of light movement, like a walk across the room or a set of standing calf raises, improve metabolic markers in circulation. Healy and colleagues' work suggests aiming for that refresh every half hour to an hour during routine desk work. These shifts activate muscles, re-engage enzymes like lipoprotein lipase, and counter the postural stagnation that builds from stillness. Think of each break as a system reboot. Stand to refill a water bottle, pace during a phone call, shift between sitting and supported standing. These light activities aren't meant to burn significant calories. They're there to prevent your body from slipping into a prolonged idle mode that's harder to correct later. Fieldwork in active cultures shows natural breaks happen far more often, sometimes every 10 to 15 minutes, but for most office environments, a 30 to 60-minute rhythm is realistic and effective. The benefits show up quickly. In lab settings, participants who moved every half hour maintained steadier attention and reacted faster in decision-making tasks compared with those planted in their seats for long blocks. Physically, they reported less stiffness, fewer aches, and better comfort across the day. Metabolically, those short breaks helped keep blood sugar from spiking as high after meals and supported the enzymes that manage fat processing, effects linked to long-term cardiovascular health. It's also about becoming aware of the tipping points. Slouching into your chair, losing track of a conversation, struggling to pull an idea into focus. Those are early signals that too much uninterrupted sitting is already taking a toll. If you wait until you feel physically restless, you've probably gone too long without a change. That's why building movement into natural transitions, finishing a work block, sending an email, wrapping up a meeting, makes it easy to keep up. Each natural pause is a cue to stand, move for a minute, and then sit again if that's most comfortable. Once this becomes routine, you stop seeing it as a disruption. Small breaks protect the quality of the time spent at your desk, so even if you're in the chair a little less, you often get more done. They also help break the mental pairing of work with stillness. Different postures and movement contexts can change how the brain approaches problems. You might brainstorm more easily on your feet or think more strategically while pacing. So rather than telling yourself never sit, which is impractical and ignores the evolutionary role of rest, focus on not turning sitting into an unbroken state. For most people, a realistic target is to interrupt sitting roughly every 30 to 60 minutes, even with just 60 to 90 seconds of light movement. That could be calf raises, shoulder rolls, or a short walk. These micro breaks cost little time but restore circulation, activate muscles, and revive focus. Before you move on to the next section, try this. Stand up, do one slow calf raise, then one shoulder roll. Sit back down and notice whether your attention feels subtly sharper. That's the mechanism in action. Light movement wakes up body and brain quickly. Changing how you sit is far less extreme than the new smoking slogan suggests. The aim isn't fear, it's control. building steady, repeatable breaks into your day so you avoid the slow drain of long stillness. Over time, you'll notice fewer afternoon crashes, and your clearest thinking hours will stretch further into the day. And once you have that foundation of better energy throughout the day, the next question is how to use your movement time for more than just breaking stillness. How to build the kind of strength that quietly supports mental and physical stamina well beyond the office. Myth number 3, strength training is just for gym people. Myth number 3, strength training is just for gym people. For many, the idea of lifting weights is tied to images of bodybuilding stages, powerlifting meets, or crowded fitness centers filled with clanging plates. Cardio feels simpler and more approachable. You put on shoes, go for a run or a brisk walk, and feel like you've done your part for the day. Strength training often gets filed under only for people who really live at the gym, so it's easier to skip than to figure out how to use a barbell, a set of dumbbells, or resistance bands. At first, that decision might seem harmless if you're staying active in other ways. Over time, it changes more than just muscle tone. It affects how your body and brain handle the demands of each workday. Muscle declines naturally with age, a process called sarcopenia. It happens slowly, so it's easy to miss at first. Starting around age 30, most adults lose about 3 to 5% of their muscle mass each decade without targeted resistance training. That erosion shows up in more than physical strength. It's linked to how efficiently your brain can sustain focus and problem solving over long hours. Muscles act as storage and release points for energy throughout the body and help regulate metabolic processes that influence blood flow to the brain. When muscle function fades, stamina for both physical and cognitive work drops, and tasks that used to feel effortless can start to drain you more quickly. There's also the stability factor. Muscle strength supports your joints and helps you adjust fluidly to changes in position. When that support weakens, simple transitions, standing up from your chair, bending to pick something up, can feel a little less smooth. You may subconsciously avoid certain movements, further reducing circulation and reinforcing sedentary patterns. That creates a loop where both mental and physical energy taper down, often without you noticing the cause. Multiple randomized controlled trials and meta-analyses show consistent cognitive benefits from resistance training. Participants training 2 or 3 times a week for 8 to 12 weeks improved executive function, processing speed, and working memory compared to control groups. In older adults, it can slow the rate of cognitive decline. In younger adults, it boosts adaptability and problem-solving speed. These skills, prioritizing, filtering, distractions, switching between tasks, are directly relevant to high-quality work performance. They aren't confined to the gym. They're the tools you use to run a meeting, respond quickly to unexpected problems, and make better decisions under pressure. The benefits aren't purely mental. Stronger muscles send stronger, clearer signals through your nervous system. That impacts coordination, posture, and general physical readiness, all of which shape how responsive and focused you feel on the job. Everyday actions like holding yourself upright at a desk or pivoting to interact with someone nearby are supported by the underlying muscle base you carry. If it's strong and well-trained, those movements are effortless. If it's weak, they can subtly add to fatigue. Resistance training also influences how your body reacts to stress. Deadlines, client calls, and unexpected complications trigger hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Well-trained muscle helps buffer those responses through better glucose control and a higher capacity to use surges of energy without tipping into anxiety or panic mode. That steadier physical state makes it easier to stay calm and think clearly when things get intense. For busy professionals, strength work doesn't require a full gym. Twice a week, just 2 sessions of 20 to 40 minutes can be enough to initiate benefits shown in research. If you have no equipment, that could mean bodyweight squats, push-up variations, and lunges. With a resistance band, you can add rows or presses. If you have dumbbells or kettlebells, try loaded carries, goblet squats, or overhead presses. These are foundational movements backed by studies as effective for building strength and improving cognitive markers. The key is progressive overload, not necessarily lifting heavy at first, but gradually asking your muscles to do a little more over time so they adapt. Most research showing mental and physical gains used sessions where form was prioritized, effort built steadily, and rest between sets was enough to maintain quality movement. You don't need to chase exhaustion. The objective is consistency, not collapse. Pairing strength training with aerobic activity creates a more complete physical base. Cardio boosts endurance and heart health, while resistance exercise improves muscle mass, nervous system efficiency, and metabolism. Together, they address different aspects of energy production and mental clarity. Even for people already meeting cardio guidelines, adding strength work has been shown to shift markers for focus and fatigue resistance in ways cardio alone does not. Changes to physical appearance might take weeks or months, but cognitive improvements often appear faster. Some participants in controlled studies report clearer thinking and better afternoon focus within the first month of starting strength training. That's likely because rising muscle engagement quickly improves metabolic regulation and blood flow patterns, even before visible muscle size changes appear. For many, the biggest barrier is reframing what strength training means. It's not reserved for people aiming for larger muscles or spending hours lifting weights. It's a practical, research-backed tool for preserving the ability to think, react, and endure the demands of modern work. A short appointment with resistance training twice a week is as much an investment in professional performance as any productivity strategy you might try. Skipping it may not feel like a loss today, but gradual muscle decline often shows up first in small, inconvenient ways. A slight loss of balance, stepping off a curb, more effort required to carry groceries, drifting focus during a critical part of the day. These aren't just annoyances, they're signs that resilience is slipping. Strength training is one of the few accessible methods that slows or even reverses those changes. If you manage a career, maintain a household, or simply want to keep independence as you age, resistance training applies to you. Starting now allows each set and rep to build a margin of protection against the physical and cognitive dips that tend to accelerate later. And because it is effective in modest doses, it can fit into even a full schedule without requiring a major shift in lifestyle. The most important change is viewing it as an essential part of your week, not an optional extra when you have time. Over months and years, that consistency shapes your capacity to handle stress, sustain focus, and produce high-quality work. Strong muscles don't just help you lift, they help you carry mental performance through the hours that matter most. And once you start thinking about physical activity as a way to drive mental output, it raises another question. How do you know if you're actually doing enough of the right kinds of movement each day? That's where many people turn to the numbers on their wrist, trusting step counts and heart rate data to tell the whole story. But those readouts may not be showing you the full picture. The productivity equation your fitness tracker doesn't show. The productivity equation your fitness tracker doesn't show starts with understanding that the numbers on your wrist are only part of the story. A high step count can feel satisfying, but steps measure volume, not the quality, timing, or type of movement. And they certainly don't show whether your mental energy has stayed steady through your workday. Health organizations like the WHO and research in the British Journal of Sports Medicine point out that while step counts are a useful baseline, patterns of activity matter more for certain outcomes. Breaking up long periods of sitting and sprinkling in short bursts of higher intensity effort, sometimes called vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity, are stronger predictors of metabolic health and reduced disease risk than total steps alone. You could clock 10,000 steps but take most of them in a single evening walk, leaving the rest of your day spent in a static posture that dulls focus and energy. Mental performance responds to when and how you move as much as how much you move. Too little activity and your alertness drops. Too much intense effort at once and you can sap the very resources you need to do complex work. The most productive rhythm is one where movement regularly nudges your brain into a more alert state without pushing your body into extended recovery mode during your core work hours. That balance comes from thinking beyond exercise as one block of time, and instead layering the three main categories, cardio, strength, and mobility, so that each plays a different role in supporting both body and mind. Cardio improves blood flow and regulates the delivery of fuel to the brain. Strength builds the muscular infrastructure that stabilizes your posture and evens out your energy supply. Mobility keeps joints moving freely and reduces the physical tension that quietly drains mental focus. Neglect any of these and you introduce a vulnerability, whether that's discomfort from stiffness, energy dips from unstable blood sugar, or reduced circulation to the brain. The point isn't to chase exhaustion, but to draw on these complementary effects in ways that match your actual work demands. You don't have to overhaul your schedule to cover these bases. A straightforward blend, supported by concurrent training research, is daily micro breaks, 2 strength sessions each week, and 2 short cardio or mobility sessions. Meta-analyses show that mixing endurance and resistance work yields more cognitive benefit, especially in older adults, than sticking to one mode alone. Circulation boosts from cardio, muscular capacity from resistance, and tension-reducing mobility work together to create better daytime cognitive resilience. When arranged well, each type of movement supports the others instead of competing for your limited daily energy. Keeping cardio moderate is often the most effective approach for workday clarity. That means activities like brisk walking, cycling, or swimming that raise your breathing and heart rate without leaving you shaky or lightheaded. These sessions can fit mid-morning or at lunch to reset focus without cutting into your afternoon output. Even 10 to 15 minutes is enough to produce an alertness lift that lasts for hours. Strength work, on the other hand, can be kept to 2 focused sessions per week, targeting major muscle groups with moves like squats, lunges, push-ups, rows, or presses. The goal here is gradual progression, making muscles work just a bit more over time to improve energy stability, posture, and movement efficiency. Mobility can be treated as the maintenance layer. 2 short sessions per week plus tiny doses throughout your day, shoulder rolls, torso twists, hip circles, cut down the physical wear of long sitting or repetitive movements. This isn't just comfort. It frees up cognitive bandwidth, otherwise spent processing low-grade discomfort, which subtly erodes your concentration. When joints and muscles can move through their ranges without restriction, your body stays ready to change position easily, protecting both focus and endurance. Within a work week, these elements can be mixed in simple ways. One example: Monday, short moderate cardio and mobility. Tuesday, strength. Wednesday, mobility with scattered micro-break walks. Thursday, a second strength session. Friday, light cardio and mobility. Daily, regardless of the primary session, make a point to stand, walk, or stretch briefly every 30 to 60 minutes. These breaks don't need to be complicated. Walking to refill your water, pacing during a call, a few wall push-ups, anything that interrupts stillness, restores circulation, and refreshes attention. Organizing your movement like this creates a steady supply of the physical signals your brain associates with readiness. Cardio sessions provide sharper circulation boosts. Strength sessions stabilize and improve energy use. Mobility keeps your mechanics clean, so those benefits aren't undermined by creeping physical strain. Your fitness tracker might still tell you that you've met your step goal, but now those steps are distributed, supported, and structured to actually serve the hours when cognitive performance matters most. Once you begin treating movement as a way to engineer both your physical and mental state, it's clear why a steps-only approach leaves gaps. A brisk morning walk can wake you up for the day, but pairing it with 2 minutes of mobility keeps you physically comfortable enough to focus right through to lunch. Strength doesn't usually give an immediate mental rush, but over weeks, it raises your baseline energy so you reach fewer decision fatigue walls. Each type amplifies the others when they're part of a planned system. Think of it as running 2 connected programs, one for physical conditioning, one for mental sharpness. Without alignment, progress in one doesn't always spark progress in the other. By intentionally meeting both needs, consistent movement during the day, plus well-placed cardio, strength, and mobility, you set yourself up for clearer thinking, steadier energy, and more reliable execution across tasks. That's a more complete picture than your tracker alone can give. Right after this video, write down 1 strength move and 1 3-minute walk you can schedule into this week. Then, put them in your calendar now. Keeping them visible makes it much more likely you'll follow through and start building the rhythm that protects both your output and your long-term health. And while science can explain why this balanced mix works, examples exist outside the lab. There are communities where varied movement, constant posture changes, and practical physical tasks spread through the day are the norm, and they manage to maintain steady energy without formal workouts at all. Seeing how they do it offers lessons we can adapt to our own schedules. What indigenous tribes can teach us about workday energy? In many hunter-gatherer communities observed by anthropologists and researchers like Daniel Lieberman, daily activity follows a rhythm that naturally keeps energy from spiking and crashing. The day often begins with low-intensity tasks, walking short distances to check fishing lines, collecting firewood, or gathering small items. As the sun climbs, activity progressively shifts to tasks requiring more effort, such as extended gathering trips or heavier loads. When the heat peaks, work tends to relocate to cooler shade or lighter duties like tool repair or food preparation. Late in the day, efforts slow again, communal cooking, tending fires, and organizing for tomorrow. Movement is steady but varies in intensity, posture, and purpose. This rhythm contrasts sharply with the modern habit of starting the day almost motionless, concentrating effort into compressed blocks, and then collapsing into inactivity. In traditional patterns, standing, walking, squatting, and carrying blend with seated craftwork or rest, and each posture or task naturally gives way to another long before fatigue can dig in. A high-effort period is buffered by lighter activity that still keeps the body engaged. Even rest involves changing positions and gentle movement, which keeps circulation moving and staves off stiffness. The variety is purposeful in effect, even if not planned in the structured way we think of schedules. Collecting heavy materials places load on the big leg and core muscles, calling for strength and balance. Preparing food afterward shifts demand to smaller muscle groups and fine motor precision while allowing larger muscles to recover. That alternation extends to cognitive load. A task requiring broad visual scanning may be followed by one that needs close hand-eye coordination. By avoiding long stretches in a single position or level of effort, they prevent the slow buildup of both physical and mental fatigue. Modern office routines often reverse that balance. We sit for hours with minimal positional change, then push into a burst of intense work or exercise at one end of the day. Mentally, we can trap ourselves in extended stretches of high-focus work without physical relief, hitting burnout points that can take hours to recover from. Because those breaks come so late after the day is done, the opportunity to protect sustained focus during working hours is lost. One key difference is the role of task switching. In observational studies, moving from shaping a tool to gathering food isn't downtime, it's a shift in both movement pattern and mental focus. This acts like a reset, refreshing attention and engaging different muscles before the previous group is overtaxed. After concentrated fine motor work, a larger, rhythmic activity offers recovery without stopping productivity. After a long carry or walk, steady seated crafting avoids overloading tired muscle groups while keeping the mind engaged. That principle maps well to modern mop work. If you spend an hour deep in spreadsheets or creative planning, shifting to a physical but low-intensity task, walking to discuss something with a colleague or organizing materials, can free up mental capacity for the next session. The aim is not to disrupt concentration unnecessarily, but to recognize the natural limits of sustained attention and make strategic changes in activity before those limits are exceeded. This kind of alternation isn't wasted time. Short, as active changes in posture and task type can offset the mental wear that leads to later distractions. Research from behavioral medicine and workplace studies confirms that just a few minutes of light physical activity, walking, stair climbing, mobility drills, can maintain focus and processing accuracy over longer periods compared to remaining static. Even 2 or 3 deliberate changes in the kind of effort you're making can keep you from relying on caffeine or sheer willpower to grind through the afternoon. In these breaks, the movement doesn't need to register as formal exercise. Standing stretches, shoulder rolls, or a lap around the office serve the main purpose: moving blood, changing visual focus, and shifting muscle activation. Over a week, these small actions accumulate into a pattern more closely aligned with natural human movement: frequent variation, steady engagement, no extended immobilization. Social context also plays a role. In many small-scale societies, physically active tasks are often done together, blending motion with conversation. Walking in groups to collect materials or prepare a workspace can make the physical work feel lighter and help maintain a steady pace. Adapted to an office, that could mean walking meetings, group setups for shared tasks, or debriefs that happen while moving instead of sitting. The combination of light activity and interaction can provide both physical and mental refreshment. In modern workplaces, stillness is often equated with focus, but the evidence suggests that moderate shifts in posture and activity during the day protect the quality of attention over time. Instead of one unbroken line of effort, think in cycles that alternate different types of demand. Detailed mental effort, broader physical movement, static positions, dynamic motion, enclosed environments, and open or changing surroundings. You can apply this by creating 3 to 4 main work blocks in your day, each with a distinct physical and mental posture. For example, start with concentrated seated work, transition to a brief period of walking while talking through a project with someone, then return to desk-based work, but while standing or adjusting your workspace setup. Later, handle a light physical task, then finish with another focused seated block. The durations will vary based on your responsibilities, but the goal is to prevent any single muscle group, joint position, or mental mode from dominating the majority of your hours. Even in jobs with less flexibility for leaving your station, small rotations can help. Switch between screen work and offline paperwork, take calls standing, adjust the layout of your desk, or stand to sort and review documents. Each shift resets your posture and the muscles in use, which in turn supports consistent mental performance. A simple starting point is to alternate 45 to 90 minutes of focused work with 2 to 3 minutes of movement. The activity can be as low-key as walking a short route, performing a different stretch each time, or lightly moving items from one place to another. Research into breaking up sedentary time shows these micro-breaks improve blood sugar control, circulation, and self-reported alertness. They replicate the ebb and flow pattern that, according to evolutionary research, helped our ancestors sustain attention across long days without large performance drops. Communities with naturalized movement patterns tend to show steadier energy curves, not because they never tire, but because their pacing and task variety prevent long periods of depletion. We can borrow that rhythm without adopting the lifestyle wholesale. Test it yourself. This week, try working in 60 to 90-minute focus blocks, followed by a 2-minute active break. Walk, stretch, or move in a way that feels different from the work you were just doing. At the end of the week, compare your afternoon energy levels to the week before and comment below on what you noticed. Once you begin alternating effort in this way, it becomes clear how much placement and timing of activity affect daily performance. And that opens the door to another common assumption about movement and productivity, one that limits when people think exercise can actually work for them. Myth number 4, morning workouts are the only way to win the day. Myth number 4, morning workouts are the only way to win the day. Many people still believe the most productive people train at sunrise, getting their workout out of the way before anyone else is awake. It's an idea reinforced by countless success stories: leaders out for a run before dawn, fitness influencers posting 5 a.m. gym sessions, and advice that seems to treat early training as the standard. But the clock doesn't determine the value of your workout. The real question is whether that physical effort happens when it can support your energy, focus, and performance for the tasks that matter most. For many, early mornings aren't the body's natural performance peak. After waking, core temperature starts low, and metrics like muscle power, coordination, and reaction speed tend to rise over the next several hours. That doesn't make early training ineffective. It can work well if it fits your schedule and preference, but it's not the only way to get the benefits. If the goal is stronger decision-making, better sustained attention, and more mental clarity, you can time activity to align with those needs. And research shows that doing so later in the day often delivers a stronger, immediate cognitive payoff. Studies on acute exercise effects consistently find that short bouts of moderate to vigorous movement improve working memory, attention, and mood within minutes of finishing. This is the reset effect. Circulation improves, oxygen delivery to the brain increases, and neurotransmitters involved in focus, like dopamine and norepinephrine, become more active. These benefits are temporary but potent, which means their value depends heavily on when you trigger them. If your mental energy typically dips at 1 or 2 p.m., scheduling movement in that window delivers the lift exactly when it can create more usable hours at your best. This isn't just about avoiding fatigue, it's about strategically placing performance peaks where you need them. A mid-afternoon presentation, a high-stakes negotiation, or a creative sprint late in the day all become easier to sustain if they follow a well-timed movement session. You don't need a full workout block to get the effect. Even a brisk 15-minute walk, an upper body resistance band circuit, or a short set of bodyweight movements can prime your nervous system for higher focus. In one trial, participants who performed just 10 minutes of moderate cycling improved their reaction times and accuracy on cognitive tasks immediately after. The principle is straightforward. Give your brain the boost right before you want to use it. This approach works particularly well for roles that demand reliability across the whole day. Teachers, project managers, client-facing professionals, and shift workers alike can benefit from planning brief, targeted activity before their most critical afternoon or evening work. For example, a manager who leads long strategic planning meetings after lunch might schedule a short stair climbing session at 12:45 p.m., using that burst of effort to shake off sluggishness before heading into the room. A customer service lead taking end-of-day escalation calls might use a simple resistance band routine an hour before, topping up both mood and alertness. The flexibility here is a strength. While an early workout can sometimes require extra logistics, packing gear, commuting to a gym, building in enough time to recover before starting work, midday or pre-task activity can be short, equipment-free, and done in work clothes. This lowers the barrier to execution and makes it easier to align the timing with when it matters most. The emphasis is on stimulation, not exhaustion. You're aiming to leave the session more alert than when you began. Research on microworkouts supports this strategy. Short, strategically timed bouts of movement can improve not just immediate alertness, but also mood, problem-solving efficiency, and resistance to mental fatigue for the next couple of hours. Resistance or concurrent training sessions, combining strength and cardio, performed a few times weekly, also deliver sustained cognitive benefits over time. When you match type of movement to when you need the benefit, you use the same physiological mechanisms early risers rely on, just at a point in the day that works with your own rhythm. Different chronotypes also play into this. Not everyone's mental and physical peaks come early. For some, rising at 5 a.m. to train means cutting into sleep, which undermines the benefits before they start. Others simply find that they produce their best work before lunch and want to preserve that time for deep focus rather than exercise. This doesn't make them less disciplined. It's about choosing timing that serves their performance rather than copying a template that doesn't fit. An effective way to begin is to track your daily low-energy moment for a week. Once you see a pattern, schedule a 10 to 20-minute movement reset, roughly 10 to 15 minutes before your next important task in that window. Stay consistent for at least 2 weeks, and note whether your ease of starting, decision speed, and sustained focus improve. This targeted approach makes it easier to protect your most valuable working hours without overhauling your entire day. For those with unpredictable mornings, commuting delays, childcare responsibilities, shifting meetings, this plan also safeguards the workout itself. Placing it midday or later reduces the chance of conflicts, pushing it aside, and ensures the mental lift lands when it can be used, not hours before. It sidesteps a common frustration, feeling strong after a morning gym visit, but hitting a wall before the day's most important work. Workplaces are slowly starting to recognize this timing advantage. Some integrate movement into the day through short walking meetings, stretch breaks before collaborative sessions, or allowing employees buffer time for activity ahead of critical tasks. These are not perks. They are deliberate energy management tools. Leaders who adopt them often find clearer thinking and better collaborative energy late in the day, even in roles where afternoon performance is traditionally difficult to sustain. The takeaway is simple. Morning workouts work if they fit your life, but over-relying on them as the productivity solution ignores how powerful a well-timed midday or pre-critical task movement session can be. Time your activity for when you need your brain at its sharpest, and you'll get more from the minutes you invest. This is not about abandoning a routine you enjoy. It's about adding another option that aligns your physical effort with your professional priorities. Once you understand that the value of movement is closely tied to timing, it raises a practical question. How can you trigger that reset effect without a full workout, special equipment, or needing to leave your workspace? There's an approach for that, and it works in almost any setting while still delivering a meaningful boost to focus and energy. The Microworkout Productivity Protocol. The Microworkout Productivity Protocol takes the idea of structured movement and trims it down to a form you can insert directly into your workday without overhauling your schedule. Most people avoid exercise during working hours because they picture a complete change of clothes, a trip to a gym, or at least carving out 30 to 60 minutes away from their desk. That's exactly why it gets skipped once the day is underway. This approach works differently. Short, targeted bouts of movement you can do right where you are. The goal isn't to chase muscle growth or endurance records, but to use brief, purposeful movements as cues that stimulate circulation, deliver more oxygen to the brain, and push the nervous system back into a sharper state. They're efficient enough to avoid sweating, quick enough not to derail your workflow, and simple enough to rely on consistently. The principle is backed by a growing base of research. Prolonged stillness lowers muscle activity, slows circulation, and gradually shifts the body toward an energy-conserving mode that also inhibits focus. Studies from sources like UPMC, Signos, the Society of Behavioral Medicine, and others show that interrupting sedentary time with as little as 1 to 3 minutes of activity, especially using large muscle groups, can improve alertness, support healthier blood sugar levels, and help maintain cardiovascular markers. Even a few spikes in activity across a day, sometimes termed vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity, create measurable benefits. The shift doesn't need to be huge. You simply need to exit low gear and re-engage the systems that have gone idle. Because these routines require no equipment, you can fit them in almost anywhere, before a meeting, in the corner of a home office, in a hallway between calls. The key is variety. Over the course of the day, you want to hit mobility, strength, and coordination. That means more than stretching your legs. It's about waking the posture muscles, retraining balance, and moving joints through their full range so stiffness doesn't build. Here's a practical, research-supported sequence to anchor your day. Start with a 2-minute mobility flow. Roll your shoulders forward and back 5 times. Hang in a forward fold for 10-15 seconds. Rotate your torso side to side 10 times, keeping hips steady. Step into a gentle lunge and hold for 6 reps each side. Then finish with a 10-second chest stretch by clasping your hands behind your back and drawing the shoulders down. For a 1-minute dynamic boost, do 10 controlled air squats or 30 seconds of steady stair climbing. Both use large muscle groups and raise heart rate just enough to increase brain blood flow. For a balance challenge, stand on one leg for 20-30 seconds, engaging your core and fixing your gaze on a point ahead. Switch sides. Making this harder by folding your arms across your chest or closing your eyes increases the coordination demand, forcing your brain to process rapid feedback from your body. Each of these movements works on a different performance limiter. Mobility eases tension and restores range so static postures don't become distracting. Squats or stair climbs deliver a quick circulatory boost to counteract the slowdown from sitting. Balance drills stimulate real-time coordination, which draws in rarely used neural circuits and leaves you more alert. When you rotate between them, you prevent both muscles and mind from slipping into a new form of monotony. Timing matters. A useful pattern, echoed in research from Healy and colleagues, is to apply these after every 60 to 90 minutes of focused work. Use the mobility flow early to set a baseline, then mid-morning add your dynamic boost. After lunch, when energy and focus often dip, go with the balance challenge. Mid-afternoon, insert another burst of squats or stairs to re-energize. End the workday with one more mobility round to reset posture and reduce the physical load you carry into the evening. This spread takes less than 10 minutes total across an 8-hour day, but keeps you from logging massive, uninterrupted blocks of stillness. These micro-sessions don't replace structured workouts for building higher levels of fitness, but they bridge the largest gap in typical schedules, the many waking hours where nothing counters sedentary effects. Even if you train 3 or 4 times a week, most of your available hours may still be sedentary. Small, repeated interventions throughout the day act like punctuation marks in a sentence. They help break up the run-on stretch of inactivity so each block of work starts sharper and ends without as much residual fatigue. Consistency is more important here than intensity. The same 2-minute flow done 5 times a day will have more impact on posture, joint comfort, and cognitive steadiness than a few occasional all-out efforts. Treat them as part of your workflow rather than extras. Create a clear trigger, such as finishing a focused task block or sending a report that always cues you to stand and move. That pairing makes the habit feel automatic over time. Because not everyone's capacity is the same, think of this protocol as a starting framework. If you're new to these movements or returning after a break, shorten the reps, reduce the range of motion, or use support. For example, chair-assisted squats instead of air squats until you build confidence. Progress at your own pace, and if you have any medical conditions that could limit your activity, check with a healthcare provider before you start. For those already active, you can increase repetitions, time under tension, or combine drills to keep the challenge fresh. A simple workday using this approach might look like this. After your first focus block, mobility flow. Mid-morning, 1 to 3 minutes of air squats or stair climbing. Before lunch, mobility flow, 2 minutes. Early afternoon, balance challenge, 20-30 seconds each leg. Mid-afternoon, another dynamic burst. End of day, mobility flow, 2 minutes. In this plan, you're hitting all 3 types of movement multiple times, stimulating circulation, posture, and coordination without sidelining yourself from work. The time cost is minimal, but the rhythm keeps you from sinking too deep into energy-saving mode. After a week on this pattern, many people notice subtle but meaningful improvements, less stiffness by evening, fewer focus crashes in the afternoon, and an easier transition into and out of complex work. The underlying mechanism is about maintaining a slightly more engaged body all day, which keeps the mental startup time low whenever you switch to something that requires precision or creativity. What makes this protocol valuable isn't just the physical benefits, it's how naturally it fits into the environment you already inhabit. No commute, no special clothing, no equipment. You remove the biggest barriers that often stop people from moving during the workday, which makes sticking with it far more realistic. Over time, it becomes part of how you manage your energy, rather than something you need to make time for. When you start structuring movement this way, you train both body and brain to expect regular challenges. That's important because removing all strain from your routine leaves you unprepared for stress, physical or mental. And in modern environments, it's easier than ever to default to comfort. Soon, we'll look at how this constant orientation toward easier options affects not just physical resilience, but the sharpness of your mind across the day. Why the comfort crisis is killing focus. You can see it almost anywhere you go. Escalators running beside stairs that no one uses, moving walkways creeping along next to empty corridors, shoes so cushioned that the ground underneath barely registers. Inside homes and offices, chairs mold exactly to our shape, adjustable workstations match our every posture, and climate control keeps the air at a constant, predictable temperature. Layer by layer, convenience has been built into every surface and pathway. It's reached the point where avoiding even mild physical strain is the default choice built into the design of almost every setting. The human body isn't made for this constant removal of effort. Across most of our evolutionary history, moving through the day meant ongoing, moderate demands. carrying water, walking to gather food, climbing small hills, standing for extended periods to work on a task. These forms of light strain weren't obstacles, they were part of the normal operating environment. Muscles, joints, the cardiovascular system, and even our brain's arousal and alertness responses adapted to that steady background load. When those systems aren't challenged regularly, they recalibrate downward. The result is a body that feels fine when in comfort, but runs at a lower level of readiness than it's designed for. There's also a cognitive trade-off. Small bouts of incidental strain, climbing a few stairs, walking at a quickened pace, balancing over uneven ground, act as micro-stimuli to the nervous system. They require posture adjustments, activate stabilizing muscles, and produce a gentle rise in heart rate. Each of these changes sharpens communication between the body and brain. Remove them, and you strip out a natural source of mental activation. Without those recurring cues, physical ease starts to blend with mental drift, making it easier for focus to fade when your environment stays static. Comfort itself isn't inherently negative. The problem is when design removes every useful physical micro-challenge. The kind of discomfort that signals your body to adapt upward, the mild effort, not pain or injury, is missing. Without it, your tolerance range shrinks. That range matters not only for movement, but also for mental stress. The same biological systems that help you manage climbing a hill or carrying a moderately heavy load also help you recover from a tight deadline or an unexpected problem at work. When they're undertrained, your body's responses to purely mental challenges can become exaggerated. Heart rate rising faster, tension climbing sooner, clarity of thought deteriorating earlier. Studies in sedentary lifestyle research and evolutionary medicine, including reviews cited in public health summaries, note that mechanized convenience reduces incidental movement, which in turn drives higher metabolic risk and lower cognitive resilience. It's not just about burning fewer calories. It's about the loss of those consistent small challenges that keep core stress regulation pathways calibrated. You don't have to engineer strain into everything you do, but you do need to preserve just enough of it to keep those systems responsive. Everyday life offers plenty of opportunities to make that happen, but they're easy to skip. We take a lift for a single floor, stay seated for long calls, or choose delivery over picking something up on foot. Even during deliberate activity, our tools and gear often aim to eliminate effort. Thicker shoes to dampen sensation, padded seats that reduce the need for postural adjustment, handles and straps that remove natural grip strain. Each is sold as an improvement, yet each moves us further from the environment our bodies expect. The friction that's missing serves more than just muscle conditioning. It keeps the body-brain loop tuned and ready to act. Carrying a moderate load up a few flights of stairs, for example, forces immediate adjustments in breathing, balance, and muscle activation. The brain monitors each shift seamlessly. Remove these challenges, and at first, you may not notice much. But add them back, and the effect on how awake and present you feel can be surprisingly quick. One way to restore these signals without upending your day is to pick a single comfort trade and honor it daily. If your office is upstairs, skip one elevator ride and take the stairs 2 flights. If you sit during quick phone calls, choose to stand for one each morning. If you've worn heavily padded shoes all day, spend part of the evening barefoot around the house to re-engage your feet and ankles. Each is a low-friction choice that stimulates key muscle groups, boosts circulation, and tells your nervous system to expect variety. The gains depend on consistency. Tie your trade-off to something you already do. If you walk into your building twice a day, make stairs the default for at least one trip. If you take 3 calls before lunch, assign one of them as your standing call. If you normally sink into the couch after dinner, set a brief standing or walking task first. The action becomes less about willpower and more about following a pattern. Research on habit formation and physical activity nudges shows this kind of linking makes it far more likely you'll keep the new practice. Reframing how you see these moments matters. Instead of saving effort only for formal workouts, think of them as part of your base layer of movement. This mental shift stops you from overlooking small, active choices simply because they don't feel like training. The goal here isn't to exhaust yourself, it's to reintroduce a steady drip of challenge that keeps your body's support systems ready and your attentional systems tuned in. Stack these moments over days and weeks, and the changes accumulate. Physically, the muscles that hold you upright stay active longer, your joints experience fuller movement, and your balance improves as stabilizers wake up more often. Cognitively, the nervous system gets more frequent stay alert pings, helping you sustain focus between big pushes of work. Because these effects build from low-intensity signals rather than high-stress spikes, you're also less dependent on caffeine or tight scheduling tricks to stay engaged. Literature on micro breaks and movement interruptions indicates that many people notice shifts in alertness within days, with more consistent stamina emerging over a few weeks. While you can't recreate an ancestral lifestyle in a modern setting, you can use small, regular steps to narrow the gap. It doesn't take much. A few extra floors climbed, minutes on your feet when you might otherwise sit, or short barefoot intervals at home. Each one is a cue to your body to stay adaptable and to your brain to stay switched on. The return is often clearest in non-physical settings. Afternoons carry less mental drag, unplanned changes in projects feel less disruptive. You catch details earlier and hold patience longer. By keeping small, useful stressors in the mix, you preserve both comfort and capability instead of trading one for the other. Comfort is neutral. The way it's designed in most spaces simply removes too many natural triggers that keep us sharp. When you put some of those triggers back on purpose, you regain the part of your readiness that convenience quietly subtracts. And while personal habits are the first lever, the spaces we spend our days in can either support or sabotage these choices. Some environments make active options visible and easy, while others hide or discourage them without meaning to. That's where the larger design and culture around you start to shape how much movement fits naturally into your day. Designing a movement-friendly work life. Designing a movement-friendly work life starts with making small, deliberate changes that reduce the friction between you and your next opportunity to move. You can think of it in 3 steps you can act on today. First, adjust your workspace so moving is built into how you work. Placing commonly used items, a printer, reference materials, chargers, a short walk away forces natural breaks. If you work from home, put your notepad or headset in another room so you have to stand and shift to get it. Second, add temporal cues that prompt you to stand or move. A recurring calendar reminder set for every 60 to 90 minutes is enough to interrupt long periods of stillness. Start small. Stand up during a 10-minute check-in scheduled at 11 a.m. or walk while making a quick call. Third, use cultural nudges so you're not relying only on private willpower. Ask your team if one weekly meeting can be standing, or take a one-on-one conversation onto a short walking route. These are low-cost, non-disruptive changes, but together they start tipping your daily rhythm toward more activity. These adjustments work because they rely less on your memory and motivation and more on shaping the environment, so the easiest option involves movement. When everyday pathways, schedules, and norms put you on your feet, physical activity stops feeling like a separate task and starts becoming part of getting things done. You're not seeking extra time, you're redirecting the way existing time is structured. The physical layout is the simplest lever. Work surfaces that allow both sitting and standing create options, even if you start with just 15 minutes standing in the late morning or mid-afternoon. In shared spaces, keeping tools or resources in a central spot means movement is built into collaboration. High tables in common areas encourage quick stand-up conversations instead of defaulting to chairs. Even small changes like using a higher stool or leaning support can subtly stimulate postural muscles and keep you from locking into a single position for hours. In hybrid and remote setups, location strategy matters. Designating an active zone in your home, whether that's a corner with resistance bands, a clear bit of floor for stretches, or a standing desk, makes it easier to transition into movement. Research into microworkouts and home-based activity programs shows that these cues in the physical environment increase follow-through. Once you have the space, pair it with a calendar entry for a 5-minute midday mobility break. keep it consistent enough that you reach for movement automatically at that time. Cultural patterns often decide whether physical changes stick. In many workplaces, even with adaptable furniture and open space, people sit because they think stillness is the sign of focus. That's why leadership modeling matters. When managers take walking calls, stand during internal discussions, or use short pauses for stretching, they give silent permission for others to do the same. Layer scheduled micro breaks into that culture, timed prompts in the team calendar, or a brief group movement after a long meeting. And it removes the ambiguity about when it's acceptable to get up. Add a cooperative accountability element, like logging movement breaks in a shared tracker, and participation rates tend to rise. Lieberman's field research emphasizes the social element. Humans evolve to move together, and shared commitments make the habit both more normal and more sustainable. Group participation doesn't have to mean competition. A collective goal, such as a team, we'll stand up 50 times this week, can keep the tone inclusive. In an office, this might look like a quick check mark on a whiteboard. In a distributed team, it might be a shared document or group chat where people note when they've taken a break. The point isn't to measure every detail. It's to make the act of moving visible enough that it becomes a regular, lightly reinforced behavior. Beyond cues and challenges, the shape of your environment can encourage more incidental movement. In larger offices, placing shared resources like kitchens, supply points, or whiteboards in different zones naturally builds walking into the day. In smaller spaces, you can create relocation points by setting a secondary work surface in another room for certain tasks. Over the course of a week, those short transfers add up without feeling like extra activity. Light and air can influence this too. Work areas near windows or with good airflow are naturally more appealing for tasks done standing. If you have access to outdoor space, even for a few minutes, it can double as a place for walking calls or reflective work. When the shift from desk to movement space is easy and obvious, people take it more often. The same principle applies to task design. Roles and responsibilities that involve short physical segments can be rotated so everyone in a team gets small doses of movement. Simple jobs, setting up a meeting space, delivering materials to another floor, checking shared equipment. Each take only a few minutes, but help interrupt static stretches. It avoids the pattern where the same few people handle all the physical errands and spreads the benefits across the group. For remote workers, deliberate inefficiency keeps the day active. Placing certain items intentionally out of reach, taking calls while standing or pacing when video isn't needed, and opening or closing a work block with a change in posture prevents long, uniform stretches. Simple tools like a resistance band hook or a balance pad next to your desk can create active standing options in minimal space. Whichever setup you start with, link your changes to a recurring trigger. That could be an hourly chime, a natural work break, or the end of a meeting. When the decision to move is attached to something you always do, the action becomes routine rather than an interruption. Over weeks, you'll start to see shifts in both how frequently you change position and how steady your focus stays across the day. It's worth underscoring that you don't have to overhaul everything at once. Begin with one physical tweak to your workspace, one timed cue, and one shared or cultural nudge. An active zone, a 60 to 90-minute reminder, and a weekly standing meeting are enough to test the effect. As these become normal, you can add or adjust elements to suit your role and environment. The underlying aim is to position movement as the baseline, not the exception. What you're doing in this process is designing friction back into a frictionless environment. In a context built to keep you seated and still, small acts that require getting up reclaim some of what the body expects as normal. Combined with cues and a supportive culture, those acts aren't just personal quirks, they become part of the way your workday functions. When this alignment takes hold, movement shifts from a separate task to a normal part of your job. You no longer need special motivation to stand up. It happens because your tools, your schedule, and the people around you all support it. Changes in posture and light activity become woven into daily routines, protecting your physical readiness and mental clarity without stealing hours for formal exercise. The payoff is more than just reduced stiffness. By keeping the body ready through the day, you avoid asking the brain to perform complex work from a physically idle state. Your energy curve flattens in a good way. Fewer steep drops, more time at an even productive level. Teams notice steadier engagement, fewer late-day slowdowns, and more consistent performance even during demanding stretches. Individuals find their concentration easier to sustain and their transition into after-work hours smoother. This isn't about making movement a side project to work. It's about building it into the fabric of how you get work done. And once it's part of the design, movement stops being an afterthought and starts acting as one of your core tools for getting the best out of your time. The next step is recognizing what that means for the bigger picture, the link between how much you move and how sharp, ready, and effective you remain throughout the day. Movement is not an add-on for when life allows. It's the base layer that supports clear thinking and physical readiness. Treat it like a hobby, and it will always lose to other priorities. Treat it like a core skill for work, and it becomes as routine as checking in with your team or meeting a deadline. Every step, stretch, and posture change is not downtime, it's upkeep for the system doing the work. 1. Break sitting every 30 to 60 minutes. 2. Sprinkle micro-workouts 1 to 3 minutes. 3. Add 2 resistance sessions weekly. Stand up and try a 60-second mobility flow right now. Comment your 2-minute move below and join the 7-day micro challenge. Let's do it together.